The fiddle player hit a sour note, and everyone pretended not to notice. That's how things were in Copperfield. Mistakes got swallowed, buried under the weight of what was proper. The harvest dance was packed wall to wall, bodies moving in practice circles, boots scuffing the worn planks of the community hall. Lanterns swung overhead, casting restless shadows across faces flushed with whiskey, and the simple relief of another season survived. Ethan Rourke stood against the back wall like a piece of furniture nobody wanted but couldn't quite throw out. He felt the room more than saw it, which was to say he didn't see it at all, hadn't seen anything but darkness for 8 months now. But he could map every person by the sound of their boots, the rustle of skirts, the particular way each laugh carried across the space. The Hendersons by the punch table, too loud, trying too hard. The Morrison boys near the door, probably passing a flask. Old Maggie Kern holding court in her corner, her voice like gravel in a tin can. And the silence. The pointed, careful silence that opened up around him like a wound. "Evening, Ethan." It was Tom Brackley, too hearty, too quick. Ethan heard him approach, smelled his pine soap, tracked the exact moment he'd pivot away before any real conversation could start. 3 seconds. That's all Tom gave him. "Tom." The man was already moving, gone before the word fully landed. Ethan's jaw worked. His hand found the wall behind him, fingertips reading the grain of the wood the way another man might read a newspaper. Cottonwood. Old growth. The hall had been built by his grandfather and men like him, back when this valley was just a name on a map and hope was currency enough. Now hope was in short supply, and Ethan was a poor investment. "More punch?" Sarah Wellborn materialized at his elbow, bright and shrill as a mockingbird. Her charity grated worse than her indifference would have. "I'm fine." "You sure? You look a little—" "I said I'm fine." She retreated in a huff of skirts and wounded dignity. Ethan didn't care. He was tired of being everyone's good deed, their chance to feel noble for 5 minutes before scurrying back to their comfortable lives where blindness was something that happened to other people. The music swelled. A reel, fast and bright, designed to make people forget the hard winter coming. Ethan's boot tapped once against his will, muscle memory from a life when he could dance, ride, rope, and do every damn thing these people still took for granted. "Mr. Rourke." The voice came from his left, low enough that he almost missed it under the fiddles. Female. Unfamiliar. He turned his head toward the sound. "Yeah? Would you dance with me?" The question hit the air like a rock through glass. Around them, Ethan felt the room's attention shift. Conversation stuttered. The fiddle player, bless him, kept going, but everything else seemed to hold its breath. "You serious?" Ethan's voice came out harder than he meant. Dead serious. He couldn't see her face, couldn't read whatever expression might explain why anyone would ask a blind man to dance in front of half the territory, but he heard the certainty in her voice, felt the way she stood her ground while everyone else watched like this was a show they'd paid admission for. "I don't dance anymore." "That's all right." A pause. "Neither do I." Something in the way she said it made him reconsider. Not pity, not charity, just a simple statement of fact, like she was commenting on the weather. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mara Vance." He rolled the name around, testing it, came up empty. "Don't know you." "No reason you would." Another silence, but this one was different, charged. Ethan felt the weight of every eye in the hall pressing down on them both, waiting to see what he'd do. Waiting for him to prove he was the broken thing they'd decided he was. Screw that. "All right then, Miss Vance." He pushed off the wall, straightened his shoulders. "Let's see what kind of fool you are." He heard her smile before she spoke. The persistent kind. She took his hand. Her palm was rough, calloused in ways that told stories: work, hardship, survival. Not some town girl who'd spend the winter embroidering by the fire. Her grip was firm, confident, and when she placed his other hand on her waist, she didn't flinch or hesitate. They started to move. Ethan stumbled in the first 3 steps. His spatial sense was good, but not perfect. Not in a crowded room where bodies shifted like water and sound bounced wrong. He felt the watching eyes turn satisfied, heard the barely there murmurs that meant people were getting what they expected. "You're leading with your head," Mara said quietly. "Stop thinking. Just move. Easy for you to say. Actually, it's not. Her hand tightened slightly on his. I'm terrible at this. Never could keep rhythm, worth a damn. Despite himself, Ethan felt his mouth twitch. So why'd you ask? Seemed like you could use the company. And you couldn't find anybody else? Didn't want anybody else. They turned, nearly colliding with another couple. Mara steered them clear, smooth as silk. Ethan felt the shift in her weight, the subtle pressure that guided him without pulling. She was good at this, not dancing exactly, but navigating, reading the room, finding the path forward. You from around here? He asked. Passing through. Long pass. Maybe. The music shifted, slowed. A waltz now, something softer, easier to manage. Ethan found the rhythm, let his body remember what his eyes couldn't verify. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Mara followed, or maybe led. He couldn't quite tell anymore, and that bothered him less than it should. People are staring, he said. Let them. They think you're crazy. They're probably right. She paused. They think you're finished. They're definitely right. Are they? The question landed harder than it had any right to. Ethan missed a step, caught himself. You don't know anything about me. I know you're still standing, Mara said. That counts for something. Does it? In my experience? Yeah. The song ended. They stopped moving, but neither let go. Ethan became aware of the space around them, the way the crowd had pulled back slightly, giving them room but not distance, like they were something dangerous, unpredictable. Thank you for the dance, Mara said, formal now, public. Thank you for asking. Ethan meant it more than he expected to. She stepped back, released his hand. He felt her start to turn, to walk away, and something sharp kicked in his chest. Not attraction exactly, but recognition, like he'd just found something he hadn't known he'd lost. Miss Vance, she stopped. Yes? You need work? The question surprised him as much as her, but once it was out, he couldn't take it back. Didn't want to. What kind of work? Cautious, testing. Ranch work. I've got 200 acres going to hell and winter coming in fast. Can't pay much, but there's a bunkhouse and meals. He paused, felt the truth claw its way up. I need help. Real help. Not the kind where someone feels good about themselves for an afternoon then disappears. You offering me a job or issuing a challenge? Both, probably. She laughed, short and sharp. When do I start? Tomorrow, dawn. You know where the Rourke Ranch is? I'll find it. Then she was gone, footsteps fading into the general noise of the dance resuming. Ethan stood there, slightly stunned by what he'd just done, hiring a stranger on instinct. His father would have called him 10 kinds of stupid. Ethan, another voice, this one slick as oil on water, Caleb Dorn. That was quite a show. Ethan's spine went rigid. Caleb, gotta hand it to you. You know how to make an entrance, or an exit, hard to tell which. Dorn moved closer, his cologne too strong, too expensive for a harvest dance. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about my offer. Not interested. You haven't even heard the new numbers. Don't need to. Ethan turned toward where he remembered the door being. The ranch isn't for sale. Ethan, be reasonable. Dorn's voice dropped, took on that tone men used when they thought they were being helpful. You can't run that place alone. Everyone knows it. Hell, you know it. I'm offering you a fair price and a clean exit. Take it before winter comes and you lose everything. I said no. You're being stubborn. That's my right. It's foolish is what it is. Dorn's patience was wearing thin. Good. You're a blind man on a failing ranch. How long do you think you can keep this up? A month? 2? What happens when a fence breaks and your cattle wander? When a pipe bursts and you can't see to fix it? When something goes wrong and there's nobody there to... Then something goes wrong. Ethan cut him off, sharp as barbed wire. That's life, Caleb. Things break. People adapt. I'm not selling to you or anyone else, so you can stop circling like a damn vulture. Silence. Tight and brittle. Your pride's going to kill you, Dorn said finally, and I won't be around to scrape up the pieces. Don't remember asking you to. Ethan walked away, hand trailing the wall until he found the door. The night air hit him like a baptism, cold and clean. He stood on the porch, breathing hard, fists clenched at his sides. Dorn wasn't wrong. That was the hell of it. The ranch was dying. Ethan could feel it every day. The fence posts rotting, the barn door that stuck, the loose board on the porch he hadn't fixed because finding it by touch took longer than he had patience for. His neighbor Jake Sullivan had been checking the cattle once a week out of pity, and even that charity was starting to wear thin. 8 months ago, Ethan had been a different man. Strong, capable, whole. Then the accident. A spooked horse, a bad fall, a kick to the head that should have killed him but left him with something worse than death. Darkness that never lifted, never changed, never gave him a single moment of relief. The doctor said his optic nerves were crushed, said he should be grateful to be alive, said he'd adjust, adapt, learn to live with it. What they didn't say was that life without sight wasn't living. It was existing. It was stumbling through every day like a stranger in his own skin, relearning everything he'd once done without thought. Walking, eating, working, all of it now required concentration, effort, constant adjustment. And the loneliness. God, the loneliness was worse than the dark. People meant well. That was the worst part. They dropped by with casseroles and concern, asked how he was doing in voices pitched high with false cheer. But they never stayed long. Never sat with the discomfort of what he'd become. They needed him to be okay so they could stop feeling guilty about being glad it wasn't them. Even his friends, the men he'd ridden with, worked beside, trusted with his life. Even they had started to fade. Invitations stopped coming. Visits grew shorter, more awkward. Nobody knew what to say to a man who'd lost the thing that defined him, so they said nothing. And Ethan became invisible. "Mr. Rourke?" He jumped, startled, hadn't heard anyone approach. Getting sloppy. "Sorry," Mara's voice again, closer than he expected. "Didn't mean to sneak up on you. Thought you left. Thought I should probably know what I'm walking into tomorrow." She paused. "That man, Caleb Dorn, he's trying to buy your land." "Trying, failing. He doesn't strike me as the type who fails often." Ethan laughed, bitter. "You got all that from eavesdropping?" "I got it from watching him watch you. Man like that doesn't make offers out of kindness." "What's he really after?" "Smart." She was sharp as a tack, this stranger. "Water rights," Ethan admitted. "My ranch sits on one of the best water sources in the valley. Control that, you control who survives drought and who goes under. Dorn's been buying up properties for years, squeezing out anyone who won't sell. I'm the last holdout. So he's waiting for you to break." "Something like that." Mara was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, harder. "And will you break?" Ethan considered. "Probably, but not for him. Not because it's convenient for everyone else. If I go down, it'll be on my terms. That's either brave or stupid. Bit of both, I imagine." He turned toward her, wished he could see her face, read whatever was written there. "You sure you want in on this?" Because Dorn wasn't lying. The ranch is in bad shape. Winter's coming early this year. You can feel it in the air, and I'm nowhere near ready. Fences need mending, cattle need moving, supplies need stocking. It's a mountain of work for 2 people, and I'm not exactly pulling my weight these days. "Can you ride?" The question caught him sideways. "What? Can you still ride a horse?" Yeah, sometimes, if the horse knows me." "Can you rope?" "Not like I used to." "But you can?" "If the target's close and loud." "Can you tell good hay from bad by smell?" "Course I can." "Know when a cow's sick before anyone else sees symptoms?" "Usually." "Know this land well enough to walk it blind?" Ethan stopped, understood what she was doing. Point made. "Then stop telling me what you can't do and start thinking about what you can." Her boots shifted on the porch boards. "I'm not here because I feel sorry for you, Mr. Rourke. I'm here because I need work and you need help. That's a fair trade. Everything else is just noise." "Why?" The question came out rougher than he meant. "Why do you need work so bad you'd take on a half-dead ranch in the middle of nowhere?" "Same reason you're not selling, probably." Her voice went distant. "Got nowhere else to be." There was a story there, dark and complicated, but Ethan knew better than to push. Everyone out here was running from something. The frontier didn't ask questions, and neither should he. "Dawn," he said. "North Road, 3 miles out. Look for the burned oak at the turnoff." "I'll be there." "Miss Vance?" "Yeah." "Thank you. For the dance." He heard her smile again, that particular quality of air that meant lips curving. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Rourke." Then she was gone, boot heels fading into the night. Ethan stood alone on the porch, listening to the party continue without him. Inside, people were laughing, dancing, living lives that made sense. Out here, in the dark that was his constant companion, Ethan felt something shift. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too fragile, too easily crushed. But possibility. The bare edge of it, rough and uncertain. He'd hired a stranger on instinct, made promises he wasn't sure he could keep, and opened his door to whatever consequences came with that choice. Probably stupid. Probably desperate. But it was something. After 8 months of nothing, it was something. Ethan walked home through the dark, counting steps, reading the world through sound and memory. His boots knew these roads better than most people knew their own houses. Left at the creek, where the water ran shallow this time of year. Right at the miller's fence line, where the posts creaked in a specific rhythm. Straight through the open country, where coyotes sang and the wind carried the smell of sage and juniper. Home appeared like a ghost in his mind, not seen, but felt. The barn's bulk to the left, solid and familiar. The house straight ahead, 2 stories of rough timber and stubborn pride. The corral to the right, empty now except for Storm, his gelding, the only horse that hadn't spooked when Ethan went blind. He found the porch steps by memory, climbed them with his hand trailing the rail his father had carved 40 years back. The door stuck like it always did. He shouldered it open, stepped into the house that smelled like dust and neglect, and the particular loneliness of a man living alone. The fire had gone out hours ago. Ethan didn't bother relighting it, just shucked his coat, found his chair by touch, and sat. Tomorrow, everything would change. For better or worse, he'd just invited chaos into the careful, controlled nothing he'd been surviving on. Part of him wanted to take it back, send word in the morning that the job was filled, the offer rescinded, go back to the slow death he'd been managing just fine. But another part, the part that used to ride the high country in spring, rope wild mustangs for the hell of it, and dare the land to break him, that part was stirring. Waking up after 8 months of hibernation. Dangerous, that part. It got people killed. But damn, it felt good to feel something again. Dawn came cold and sharp, the sun still below the ridge when Ethan heard hoofbeats on the road. He was already up, dressed, standing in the yard with Storm saddled and waiting. Years of ranching meant dawn was in his bones, regardless of whether he could see it coming. The horse approached at a steady walk, single rider, light in the saddle but confident. "Mr. Rourke," Mara's voice carried clear in the thin air. "Miss Vance, you found it all right?" "Followed your directions." A pause. "Place looks worse in daylight." Ethan couldn't help the short laugh. "Honesty, I appreciate that. Didn't figure you for the type who wanted sugarcoating. I'm not." He heard her dismount, the creak of leather, the soft thud of boots hitting dirt. She led her horse closer. Not too close. Respecting Storm's space, his space. Good instincts. "So," Mara said, "where do we start?" "Tour first. Need you to see what you're dealing with." Ethan swung up into his saddle, felt Storm shift beneath him, testing. "Follow me. I'll talk while we ride." They set out across the ranch, moving slow. Ethan narrated the landscape he couldn't see but knew better than his own heartbeat. 200 acres, give or take. Most of it's decent grazing land, native grasses, some scrub. Creek runs through the south section, never goes dry even in bad years. That's what Dorn's really after. He turned Storm left, muscle memory finding the path. Got about 60 head of cattle scattered across the property. Should be closer to 80, but I lost some over the summer. Sold a few, lost a few to predators. Couple just wandered off through broken fence, and I couldn't track them. Where are they now, the cattle? Mostly in the north pasture. Jake Sullivan's been pushing them that direction when he checks on them. Ethan's jaw tightened. Charity? Sounds like practicality to me. Same thing out here. They rode in silence for a bit. Ethan felt the morning sun on his face, warming, but not warm enough. Fall was turning hard toward winter. He could smell it in the air, that particular crispness that meant first frost was coming soon. "Fence lines along here?" he said, pulling Storm to a stop. "How's it look?" He heard Mara shift in her saddle, studying. "Not good. Posts are rotted through in places, wires sagging. Some sections are held together more by luck than anything structural." "That's what I figured." Ethan rubbed his jaw. "We'll need to replace at least a quarter-mile of fence before winter. Otherwise, cattle will wander and we'll spend all spring trying to round them back up." "You got materials?" "Some, not enough. We'll need to make a supply run into town." "When?" "Soon as possible." He paused. "That going to be a problem?" "Why would it be?" "Town's not exactly welcoming. You'll get stares, questions. People wondering why you're working for the blind man instead of finding something more sensible." "Let them wonder." Ethan smiled despite himself. "You always this stubborn?" "Usually worse." They continued the tour. The barn, roof leaking in 2 places, door needing rehung. The chicken coop, half the birds dead or scattered because Ethan couldn't see to protect them from predators. The equipment shed, organized chaos where Ethan kept everything memorized by position, but half the tools needed sharpening or repair. By the time they circled back to the house, the sun was well up and Ethan's list of failures felt longer than the day. "Coffee?" he offered, more to break the silence than from hospitality. "Sure." Inside, Ethan moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency. Everything had its place, his place, learned through trial and error and more than a few burned fingers. He felt Mara watching, probably expecting him to fumble, to prove how helpless he really was. He didn't give her the satisfaction. Coffee poured clean, 2 cups set on the table without spilling. Small victories. "You live here alone?" Mara asked. "Yeah, parents died 5 years back, fever, never had siblings." He sat, wrapped his hands around the warm cup. "Thought about hiring help before the accident, but never got around to it. Then after," he shrugged, "didn't seem like there was much point. Can't afford to pay anyone a real wage, and charity work doesn't last." "I'm not charity." "No, you made that clear." He took a sip, let the heat ground him. "What's your story, Miss Vance? Woman riding alone, taking work at a failing ranch? That usually means she's running from something or toward something. Which is it?" "Both, maybe." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got right now." "Fair enough," Ethan let it drop. Everyone was entitled to their ghosts. "The bunkhouse is out back," he said. "Hasn't been used in years, so it'll need cleaning. Stove works, roof solid, should be livable." "I'll make it work." "Supplies are low. We'll need to stock up before first snow. Food, medical supplies, horse feed, cattle supplements. The list is long, and my credit at the general store is getting thin." "You got money for supplies?" "Some. Sold 10 head last month. Should be enough to get us through if we're careful. And if we're not? Then we get creative." Mara laughed, short and sharp. "You always this optimistic?" "You should see me on a bad day." They finished their coffee in companionable silence. Outside, Storm nickered, probably annoyed at being left saddled. The wind picked up, rattling the loose board on the porch that Ethan kept meaning to fix. "All right," Mara said, standing. "Let's get to work. What's first?" "Fence. We'll start there. It's tedious and it's hard, but it's essential." Ethan pushed back from the table. "I'll need you to be my eyes, tell me what you see, guide me where to set posts. I can still dig, still hammer, just can't do it blind without someone spotting." "I can do that." "Miss Vance?" "Yeah?" "This isn't going to be easy. I'm not easy. I'm going to get frustrated, probably take it out on you when I shouldn't. I'm going to be slow, make mistakes, need help with things I used to do in my sleep. If that's going to be a problem, it's not. You don't know that." "Sure I do." Her chair scraped back. "I've worked harder jobs for worse reasons. At least here, nobody's pretending things are better than they are. That's refreshing." They went out together, into the morning that was already burning off cold. Mara saddled up her horse, a sturdy mare, nothing fancy, and they rode out to the north fence line where the damage was worst. For the next 6 hours, they worked. Ethan learned the rhythm of it fast. Mara calling out measurements, positions, problems. Ethan digging post holes by feel, setting poles by sound. She'd guide his hammer to the nail, and he'd drive it home with the precision of muscle memory that didn't need sight. It was hard, harder than it should have been, but it worked. They fell into a pattern, an unspoken language of few words and clear direction. Mara didn't coddle, didn't overcorrect. She treated him like a partner, not a patient. By midday, they'd replaced 20 feet of fence. It wasn't much, but it was progress. They broke for lunch, cold beans and hard bread eaten sitting on the ground. The wind had turned, coming down from the mountains now, carrying the promise of snow. "Storm's coming," Ethan said. "How can you tell?" "Air pressure changes how sound carries." He tilted his head, listening. "Birds are quiet. Cattle are restless. Wind smells like snow." "When?" 3 days, maybe 4. We'll need to work fast." They did. For the next 3 days, they worked dawn to dusk, fence line by fence line, post by post. Mara's hands blistered, then calloused. Ethan's back screamed, but he pushed through. They moved cattle to safer pasture, reinforced the barn door, patched the roof. At night, Ethan collapsed into bed too tired to think, too tired to feel the weight of everything he couldn't do. For the first time in 8 months, exhaustion was a gift. On the 3rd night, Mara knocked on his door. "Problem?" Ethan called. "No problem, just wanted to talk." He opened the door, stepped aside. She came in, bringing the smell of wood smoke and cold air. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "Tomorrow. We need to make that supply run." "Yeah." "People are going to talk." "Let them." "Ethan." She used his first name for the first time, and it sounded strange, intimate. "I'm serious. Caleb Dorn's not going to like seeing us working together. He's going to push harder." "So let him push." "And if he pushes hard enough to make life difficult?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, "You asking if I can handle the pressure, or if you can?" "Both, maybe." "Fair question." He leaned against the doorframe. "Here's the truth. I don't know what Dorn's going to do. Don't know how ugly this might get, but I know I'm not selling, and I know I can't do this alone. You want out, now's the time. No hard feelings." "I'm not looking for an out." "Then what are you looking for?" She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "Honestly, I don't know. A place to land, maybe. Something that feels real after a long time of nothing feeling real." Ethan understood that better than he wanted to admit. "All right then," he said. "Tomorrow we go to town. We get supplies. We don't let anyone make us feel small. Deal?" "Deal." She left, and Ethan stood in the doorway, listening to her footsteps fade toward the bunkhouse. The wind had picked up, howling through the gaps in the barn. The storm was close now. He could feel it building, pressing down on the land. Tomorrow would be difficult. But tonight, for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ethan Rourke wasn't facing the dark alone. That had to count for something. The wagon rattled into Copperfield just after noon, every board complaining. Ethan sat beside Mara on the bench seat, his back straight despite the exhaustion that lived in his bones now. Storm followed behind on a lead, patient as ever. The town felt different in daylight, more exposed. Ethan tracked their progress by sound and memory. The blacksmith's hammer, ringing 3 doors down from the general store, was Sissy. Mrs. Patterson's bakery with its perpetual smell of yeast and sugar, the saloon where men gathered at all hours because they had nowhere better to be, and the silence that opened up as they passed. Not complete silence. People still talked, still moved about their business, but conversations dropped to whispers, and Ethan felt eyes following them like physical weight. "Steady?" Mara said quietly. "I'm steady." "I was talking to myself." That surprised a laugh out of him. Short, but real. They pulled up in front of Harmon's general store, and Ethan heard Mara set the brake, felt her hesitate before climbing down. He followed, hand finding the wagon's edge, then the hitching post. His fingers read the worn wood, found the rail, used it to orient himself toward the store entrance. The door creaked. It always had, for as long as Ethan could remember. Inside smelled like coffee beans and leather, and the particular mustiness of fabric bolts stacked too long. "Ethan?" Walter Harmon's voice came from behind the counter, surprised but covering it. Didn't expect to see you today. Need supplies. Got a list. Sure. Let me just... Footsteps approaching. Miss Vance, isn't it? Heard you were working out at the Rourke place. News travels fast, Mara said. Small town. Walter's tone was neutral, careful. What can I get for you folks? Mara read off the list. It was long. Flour, coffee, salt, dried beans, canned goods, medical supplies, horse liniment, cattle supplements, fence staples, wire, lamp oil. The essentials of survival. Walter totaled it up, and the silence that followed had weight. That's going to be $73, he said finally. And Ethan, I'm going to need to talk to you about your account. It's getting a bit... I've got cash, Ethan cut him off. He pulled the folded bills from his pocket, counted them by touch, a skill learned fast when you couldn't see denominations. That should cover it. It does, but then we're square. Another pause. Then Walter started gathering supplies, wrapping them in paper, loading them into crates. The whole time, Ethan felt the unspoken conversation hanging in the air. The concern, the doubt, the questions nobody wanted to ask directly. Can you really do this? Can you keep the ranch running? How long until you admit defeat? I'll help you load, Walter said when everything was packed. I've got it. Mara's voice, firm. Thank you, Mr. Harmon. They carried the crates out two at a time. Ethan took one side, Mara the other. It was awkward, slow, but they managed. Loading the wagon took longer than it should have. Every movement felt watched, judged. They were almost done when Boots approached on the boardwalk. Expensive Boots, moving with the confidence of a man who owned half the territory and planned to own the rest. Ethan, Miss Vance. Caleb Dorn's voice dripped false warmth. Quite the supply run you're making. Caleb. Ethan didn't turn toward him, just kept working. Planning for winter, I see. That's ambitious. That's practical. Is it? Dorn moved closer. Ethan smelled his cologne, heard the subtle shift in how sound reflected off his body. Too close, deliberately invading space. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like throwing good money after bad. That ranch is dead, Ethan. You're just too stubborn to bury it. My ranch, my money, my problem. See, that's where you're wrong. Dorn's voice hardened. When your cattle break through those rotting fences and wander onto my land, it becomes my problem. When you can't pay your debts and folks start asking why nobody helped you, it becomes everyone's problem. You're not just hurting yourself here. You're being selfish. Ethan's hands clenched on the crate he was holding. That's rich coming from you. Excuse me? You don't care about my cattle or my debts. You care about water rights and the fact that I'm the last man standing between you and controlling this valley. So spare me the concerned neighbor routine. Gentlemen, Mara's voice cut through the tension, we're just here for supplies. No need to make it complicated. Who are you? Dorn turned his attention to her. Really? Because nobody knows anything about you. You just appeared one day, latched onto a dying man's desperate offer, and now you're playing ranch hand like this is all some grand adventure. I'm someone who works for a living, Mara said evenly. Can you say the same? The air went sharp. Dorn laughed, but it wasn't friendly. You've got spirit, I'll give you that. But spirit doesn't keep cattle alive through winter, doesn't fix fences or pay bills or make a blind man see again. He paused. There's no shame in accepting reality, Ethan. I'm offering you a way out that lets you keep your dignity. Take it. I'm not interested in your version of dignity. Then you're a fool. Been called worse. Dorn stepped back, reassessing. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Harder. Fine. Do it your way. But when this all falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. I won't be making any more offers. He walked away, boots heavy on the boardwalk. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, furious and helpless in equal measure. He hated that Dorn got under his skin, hated more that some of what he said was true. You okay? Mara asked quietly. Yeah. Liar. Yeah. They finished loading in silence, climbed back onto the wagon bench. Ethan took the reins, something that still felt strange, wrong, but Mara had taught him how over the past 3 days. How to feel Storm's responses through the leather, how to track the road by sound, and the rhythm of wheels on dirt. They were halfway out of town when someone called out, "Ethan, wait up!" Jake Sullivan jogged up alongside the wagon, breathing hard. "Hold on a second." Ethan pulled Storm to a stop. "Jake?" "Listen, Jake paused, catching his breath. "I heard what Dorn said back there. Wanted you to know he's been talking to other folks too. Pressuring people. Telling them you're a liability." "Let him talk." "It's more than talk, Ethan. He's trying to turn people against you. Make it so nobody will help if things go bad this winter." "Nobody was helping anyway." "That's not—" Jake stopped himself. "Look, what I'm saying is, you've got to be careful. Dorn plays dirty when he doesn't get his way. I've seen it before. I appreciate the warning." "Do you?" Jake's frustration leaked through. "Because from where I'm standing, you're being just as stubborn as he says. Taking on more than you can handle, hiring a stranger, refusing help from people who actually care about you. I don't need help from people who think I'm broken." "Nobody thinks you're broken." "They do. You do. Everyone does." Ethan's voice went flat. "I can hear it in how you talk to me now, Jake. Like I'm made of glass. Like I might shatter if you say the wrong thing. That's not friendship. That's pity." Silence. Long and uncomfortable. "I'm trying to be a good neighbor," Jake said finally. "I know, and I'm grateful. But I need to do this my way." Jake sighed. "You always were the most pig-headed son of a bitch I ever met. Takes one to know one. A brief laugh, tension breaking, just a little. All right, but if you need anything at all, you know where to find me." "I do." Jake stepped back. The wagon rolled on. They were a mile out of town when Mara spoke. "He's right, you know." "About what?" "You being pig-headed. Thought that's what you liked about me." "I said I could work with it. Didn't say I liked it." She paused. "But he's also right about Dorn. Man like that doesn't make threats he can't back up. We need to be ready." "Ready for what?" "I don't know yet, but something's coming." Ethan felt it too, a tightening in his chest, instinct whispering warnings he couldn't quite name. The storm was still 2 days out, but something else was building, something worse. They reached the ranch as the sun started its decline. Unloaded supplies in grim silence, each lost in their own thoughts. By the time everything was put away, dusk had settled, and the wind carried the first real bite of winter. "I'm going to check the cattle," Mara said. "Make sure they're settled for the night. I'll come with you." "You don't have to. I want to." They saddled up, rode out toward the north pasture. The sky was purple and gold, colors Ethan could remember but no longer see. He tracked their progress by the rhythm of Storm's gait, the particular way hooves sounded on different ground. The cattle were restless. Ethan heard it before Mara confirmed it. The lowing, the movement, the tension that meant something was wrong. "What is it?" he asked. "Fence is down. East side. Looks like something hit it hard." "How many are out?" "Hard to say in this light. At least a dozen, maybe more." Ethan swore. "We need to round them up before they scatter too far." "In the dark? You got a better plan?" They worked for hours. Mara riding wide circles, calling positions. Ethan following by sound, using his voice and Storm's training to push cattle back toward the break in the fence. It was messy, inefficient, and by the time they got the last straggler back, both horses were lathered and Ethan's voice was raw. Mara jury-rigged a temporary repair using rope and whatever fence posts were still standing. It wouldn't hold long, but it would get them through the night. They rode back to the ranch in exhausted silence. Put the horses away, too tired to do more than pull saddles and throw blankets. In the house, Ethan fumbled with the stove, got a fire going more by luck than skill. Mara sat at the table, and he heard how heavy her breathing was. Hard work took its toll. "You should eat something," he said. "So should you." Neither of them moved. Finally, Mara spoke. "This is what he meant." "Who?" "Dorn. When he said you were being selfish, this is what he was talking about. One fence breaks, and we spend half the night fixing it. What happens when 2 break? 3? What happens when something big goes wrong and we're not fast enough, strong enough, lucky enough to catch it?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Are you saying he's right?" "I'm saying he's not completely wrong." She paused. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to be honest. This ranch is on the edge, Ethan. One bad break from going under. You know it. I know it. Pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. So what do you want me to do? Sell? Give up? Hand everything over to Dorn and walk away? I want you to think about what you're fighting for. Is it the ranch, or is it pride? The question hit harder than it should have. Ethan stood there, feeling the weight of it, the truth he didn't want to face. It's all I have left, he said quietly. This place, this land, it's the only thing that still makes sense. Losing my sight took everything else. My future, my confidence, any sense of who I was. But the ranch? He swallowed hard. The ranch is real, solid, mine. If I lose it, I lose the last piece of myself that matters. Mara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard before. You're not the only one who's lost things. I know. No, you don't. She stood, and he heard her move to the window. I had a husband, homestead in the next territory over. We built it together, every board and nail, thought we'd grow old there. Ethan waited, didn't push. He got sick, fever, same one that took your parents probably. I nursed him for 3 weeks, watched him waste away, powerless to stop it. When he died, I sold everything we'd built. Couldn't stand to look at it anymore. Couldn't stand the pity from neighbors who'd known us. So I left. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. I know what it's like to lose the thing that defined you. To wake up one day and realize the person you were is gone. She turned from the window. But here's the thing, Ethan. You're not your sight, and you're not this ranch. You're what you choose to do when everything you counted on falls apart. And what did you choose? To keep moving, to find work, to not let grief be the last thing I felt. She paused. I chose to ask a blind man to dance when everyone else was too scared. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. That was pretty stupid. Yeah, it was. But I'm glad you did. Me too. They made dinner, beans and cornbread, simple but filling, ate in silence that felt less heavy than before. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of snow. The storm was coming sooner than Ethan had thought. Tomorrow, maybe. They'd need to prepare. After dinner, Mara excused herself to the bunkhouse. Ethan sat alone, listening to the fire crack and pop. His mind chased itself in circles, worrying at problems that had no easy answers. He must have dozed off because he woke to pounding on the door. Ethan! Jake's voice, urgent. Open up! Ethan lurched to his feet, stumbled to the door. What's wrong? Your cattle. Someone cut your north fence. Deliberately. The whole section's down and your herd is scattered halfway to the ridge. What? It's bad. I was riding back from checking my stock when I saw them. Looks like someone took wire cutters to every post. This wasn't weather, Ethan. This was sabotage. Mara appeared, pulling on her coat as she ran from the bunkhouse. How many? All of them. Maybe 50 head loose. Could be more. Ethan felt the world tilt. 50 head, half his herd in the dark, with a storm coming. We need to round them up, he said. Not tonight, Jake said. It's too dark, too dangerous. We'll go out at first light. By first light, they could be miles away. We go now. Ethan, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. Those cattle are all I have. We don't get them back. I'm finished. Ranch is finished. Everything's finished. He was already moving, finding his coat, his hat. You don't have to help, but I'm going. I'm going too, Mara said. Jake swore under his breath. You're both crazy. You know that? Probably, Ethan said. You coming or not? Someone's got to keep you from breaking your neck. They saddled horses in grim determination. 3 riders against the night and the mountains and whoever had just declared war on Ethan's survival. The ride out was treacherous. No moon, just stars that Ethan couldn't see and terrain that wanted to kill the unwary. But Storm knew these trails, and Ethan trusted that more than anything else. They found the fence right where Jake said. Even without sight, Ethan could feel the destruction. Clean cuts through wire, posts knocked down deliberately. This wasn't neglect or weather. This was malice. Spread out, Mara said, taking charge. Jake, you take west. I'll go north. Ethan, stay here and listen. Any cattle that come close, turn them back toward the corral.
I can do more than stand here. I know you can. But right now, what we need is someone who can hear better than the rest of us. Be our anchor. Can you do that? Ethan hated it. Hated being the weak link, the liability. But she was right. Yeah, I can do that. They split up. The night swallowed them, and Ethan was alone with the wind and his anger. He waited, listened. The darkness pressed in from all sides, but he'd learned to navigate it. Sound became sight. Distance became something he measured in echoes and breath. Cattle lowing to the west. Far off, maybe half a mile. Moving away. He turned Storm, called out to let Mara and Jake know where he was going. No response. They were too far already. Fine. He'd do this himself. He gave Storm his head, let the gelding find the path while Ethan tracked by sound. The cattle were moving fast, spooked by something. He pushed Storm harder, risky on unknown ground but necessary. A branch caught his shoulder, nearly knocked him from the saddle. He gripped harder, leaned forward, kept going. The cattle were closer now. He could hear their panic, smell them on the wind. Storm nickered, nervous. Easy, boy. We got this. They didn't. Not really. But saying it helped. Ethan started calling, using the low, steady voice his father had taught him years ago. The voice that said, "Calm down. Come here. Everything's all right." Half the battle with cattle was convincing them you knew what you were doing even when you didn't. Some of them responded, turned, started drifting back the way they'd come. Others kept running. Ethan followed the runners, pushing Storm through scrub and sage. His world narrowed to sound and instinct. Left, right, forward, all chosen by feel and hope. Then Storm pulled up sharp, nearly throwing him. What? The drop-off. He remembered it now, too late. A 15-foot cut in the land where the creek had carved through limestone over centuries. One more step, and they'd have gone over. Ethan's heart hammered. He backed Storm away, breathing hard. The cattle he'd been chasing were on the other side. He could hear them, but couldn't reach them. Not in the dark, not without breaking his neck. He sat there, shaking with adrenaline and rage. Rage at whoever had done this. Rage at his limitations. Rage at the whole damn world that seemed determined to prove he couldn't do anything right anymore. "Ethan!" Mara's voice, distant, calling for him. "Here!" he shouted back. "By the creek!" She found him 5 minutes later, Storm's hoofbeats giving her away long before she spoke. "You okay?" "Fine. Lost about 10 head over the drop. Can't get to them. We'll come back in daylight." She rode up beside him. "Jake's got most of the main group headed back. We should join him." They rode in silence for a while. Then Mara said, "That was stupid, going off alone like that." "I know. Could have gotten yourself killed." "I know. But you got some of them back. That counts." It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt hollow, temporary. A finger in the dam while the whole thing threatened to burst. They met up with Jake driving about 30, head back toward the ranch. It took another 2 hours to get them all secured in the corral, do a rough count, assess the damage. 42 head recovered. At least 15 still missing, maybe more. Dawn was breaking by the time they finished. The sky went from black to gray to that particular pale blue that promised snow before nightfall. Jake looked exhausted. So did Mara. Ethan probably looked worse. "I'm going to ride back out," Jake said. "See if I can find any more before the storm hits." "You don't have to." "Yeah, I do." Jake's voice was firm. "Because that's what neighbors do, even when the neighbor's being a stubborn ass." He rode off before Ethan could respond. Mara and Ethan stood in the corral, surrounded by nervous cattle and the smell of disaster. "It was Dorn," Ethan said. "Had to be. Maybe. Or maybe someone who owes him favors. Either way, we can't prove it. So he just gets away with it? For now." She paused. "But people like that always overreach eventually. When they do, you make sure you're still standing to watch them fall. And if I'm not still standing, then you get back up." Simple, direct. The kind of logic that made sense when nothing else did. They went inside, too tired to do more than collapse. Ethan heard Mara start to leave for the bunkhouse, then stop. "I'm staying," she said. "Storm's coming and someone should be close in case something else goes wrong." She took the couch without asking. Ethan was too exhausted to argue. He lay in bed, listening to the house settle, to Mara's breathing even out into sleep. Outside, the wind was building. First snow would fall within hours. Everything hurt. His body, his pride, his hope. But he was still here, still fighting. That had to count for something. The storm hit just after noon. Not the blizzard Ethan had feared, but mean enough. Wet, heavy snow that came down sideways, driven by wind that cut straight through wool and leather. They spent the day in controlled chaos, checking cattle, reinforcing shelter, making sure water troughs didn't freeze. The work was endless, brutal, necessary. By nightfall, they were both too tired to speak, just fell into their respective spaces and let exhaustion take them. The storm lasted 3 days. On the fourth morning, the storm broke. Ethan woke to silence. Not the absence of sound, but the particular quiet that came after violence passed. Snow muffled everything, transformed the world into something unrecognizable. He heard Mara moving in the kitchen, the clatter of the coffee pot, the scrape of a chair. She'd been sleeping on the couch for 3 nights now, neither of them acknowledging the arrangement or questioning it. "Coffee's on," she said when he emerged. "How bad is it?" "Won't know until we get out there." They dressed in layers, prepared for the worst. The door stuck when Ethan tried to open it. Snow had drifted against the house overnight. He put his shoulder into it, felt it give with a crack of frozen wood. The cold hit like a fist. Sharp, clean, the kind that made your lungs ache. "Jesus," Mara breathed. "What?" "Snow's waist high in places. Drifts against the barn are taller than me." They waded through it, every step a battle. The barn door was frozen shut. Took both of them pulling to break the ice seal. Inside, the horses nickered nervously. Storm pushed his nose into Ethan's chest, warm breath in the frigid air. "Easy, boy, I know." They fed and watered the horses, checked for damage. The roof had held, but barely. Snow had pushed through gaps in the boards, creating small drifts inside. "We need to reinforce this before the next storm," Mara said, "if there's time." There has to be time. They moved to check the cattle next. The corral was a disaster. Fence rails had snapped under the weight of snow and wind. Several posts had given way entirely. The cattle were pressed together in the far corner, steam rising from their bodies like smoke. Ethan did a count by sound and touch, moving among them with his hands reading their condition. Ribs too prominent on some. Others shivering despite their thick winter coats. "We're short," he said. "How many?" "At least 5, maybe more." They found the first body an hour later, half buried in a drift near the broken fence line. A young heifer, frozen solid. The second was in worse shape, down in the mud before the snow came, never got back up. The third, fourth, and fifth were scattered across the north pasture like discarded toys. By noon, they'd confirmed 7 dead. The missing cattle from the fence cutting, probably. Scattered too far to find shelter when the storm hit. Ethan stood over the last carcass, hands shaking, not from cold. 7 head, he said, voice flat. That's over $400. Gone. "We still have 35, Mara said. "That's something. It's not enough. Not to make it through winter, not to have anything left to sell come spring." He kicked at the snow, frustrated. Dorn knew exactly what he was doing. Cut the fence, scatter the herd right before the storm. Calculated, efficient. "So what are you going to do about it?" "What can I do? I can't prove anything. Can't go to the sheriff with suspicions. Can't fight a man who operates in the shadows." "Then we do what we've been doing. We survive. We adapt. We make him think he won." Ethan turned toward her voice. "Make him think he won?" "He wants you desperate, ready to sell. So we show him desperate. Let him believe his plan worked. Meanwhile, we figure out how to stretch what we have, build back what we lost, and come spring we prove he didn't break us." It was crazy, probably impossible, but it was something. "All right," Ethan said. "Let's see what we're working with." They spent the rest of the day taking inventory. The cattle that survived were in rough shape, but salvageable. Hay stores were lower than Ethan wanted, but adequate if they were careful. The money from selling those 10 head was mostly gone on supplies, with barely enough left to cover emergencies. The math was brutal, simple. They needed every single animal to survive winter, and they needed to do it on scraps. That night, Mara cooked a thin stew that was more broth than substance.
They ate in silence, both doing calculations that didn't add up to anything good. My husband used to say the frontier rewards the stubborn, Mara said, finally.
What do you think? I think it rewards the clever more than the stubborn, but sometimes stubborn is all you've got.
Ethan almost smiled. You calling me stubborn again? If the boot fits. They cleaned up, moving through the small rituals that had become routine over the past weeks. Mara took the couch without discussion. Ethan lay in bed, listening to the house creak and settle, the wind starting to pick up again outside. Sleep didn't come easy. Morning brought Jake Sullivan back, his horse trudging through snow that hadn't melted at all overnight. Found 2 more of your cattle, he said without preamble. Both dead. Creek bed about 3 miles north. Looks like they tried to find shelter and couldn't make it. 9 head lost. Ethan felt each one like a physical blow. I appreciate you looking. Yeah, well, Jake dismounted, stamped snow from his boots. I also came to tell you something. Been hearing talk in town.
What kind of talk?
The kind that says you're finished, that the storm did what Dorn couldn't. People are taking bets on how long before you sell. Let them bet. Ethan? Jake's frustration came through clear. You need to take this seriously. Dorn's not just waiting for you to fail anymore. He's actively working to make sure you do. I heard he's been talking to the bank, trying to call in any debts you might have. Talking to suppliers, suggesting they might not want to extend credit to a man who won't make it through winter. I don't have debts at the bank, and I pay cash for supplies. Now you do. But what about spring? What about when you need seed, equipment, medication for sick cattle? You think anyone's going to help you after Dorn's poisoned the well? Mara appeared in the doorway, listening. So what do you suggest? Ethan asked. Sell. Take whatever Dorn's offering and walk away before you lose everything. That's not an option. Why? Because of pride? Because it's my home. Ethan. No. His voice went hard. I'm done having this conversation. Done explaining myself to people who think they know what's best for me. This is my ranch, my life, my choice. If I fail, I fail. But I'm not giving up because it's convenient for everyone else. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, heavy and tired.
You always were the most stubborn bastard I ever met.
So you keep saying, yeah, well, maybe that's what it takes out here. He climbed back on his horse. I'll keep an ear out. If I hear anything useful, I'll let you know. Jake? Yeah? Thank you for checking on the cattle, for the warning, for... Ethan struggled for words. For not giving up on me.
Somebody's got to keep you honest. He rode off, leaving Ethan and Mara standing in the snow.
He's worried about you, Mara said. I know. He's not wrong to be. I know that too. They went back to work. The barn roof needed patching. The corral needed rebuilding. The cattle needed constant monitoring to make sure none went down from cold or hunger. Every task took twice as long in the snow, and by evening they were both exhausted. 3 more days passed in hard labor and careful rationing. Then Mara came back from checking the cattle with news that stopped Ethan cold. We've got a sick cow. Real sick. Which one? Big red one with the torn ear. She's down in the mud, won't get up. Breathing's rough. Ethan's stomach dropped. Cattle went down for lots of reasons, most of them fatal. And once a cow decided it was done, getting it back up was nearly impossible. They went out together, fighting through snow that was starting to freeze into a hard crust. The cow was right where Mara said, lying on her side, flanks heaving. Ethan knelt beside her, hands reading her condition. Fever, swollen joints, labored breathing. Pneumonia, he said, or something close to it. Can we save her? Maybe. If we get her warm, dry, medicated. He paused. That means moving her into the barn. She's got to weigh 800 pounds. I know. And she's down in mud. I know. They stared at each other, or Mara stared while Ethan faced her general direction, both understanding the impossibility of what needed to happen. We need help, Mara said. We don't have help. Then we need a plan. They spent 20 minutes rigging a sled from old fence boards and rope, got it positioned under the cow by sheer determination and leverage that defied physics. Then came the hard part. Pulling 800 pounds of sick, uncooperative animal through mud and snow was like trying to move a mountain with wishful thinking. They hitched both horses to the sled, used every bit of strength they had, and swore enough to make sailors blush. It took an hour to move her 30 feet to the barn. Once inside, they dried her off, piled her with blankets, forced water down her throat along with what medicine Ethan had on hand. Not enough, probably, but something. Will she make it? Mara asked. Don't know. 50-50 at best. They took turns through the night, checking on her every few hours. Ethan dozed in the barn, unwilling to leave her alone. Cold seeped through the walls despite the fire they'd built in an old drum. His back ached. His hands were raw. But the cow was still breathing, and that counted. Dawn came gray and mean. The cow's fever had broken slightly, but she still wouldn't stand. Ethan forced more medicine into her, more water, talking to her the whole time in the low, steady voice that sometimes worked miracles. Come on, girl, fight. You're tougher than this. I know you are. The cow's eye rolled toward him, exhausted. Yeah, I'm tired too, but we don't quit. That's not what we do. Mara brought coffee and cold biscuits. They ate sitting beside the cow, neither speaking. Outside, the world was gray on gray, sky blending into snow, blending into horizon, until everything was the same colorless nothing. This is killing you, Mara said finally. What is? All of it. The ranch, the cattle, the constant fighting. You're running on empty, Ethan. Have been since before I got here. I'm fine. You're not. You barely sleep, barely eat. Push yourself past what most men could handle, even with sight. You can't keep this up. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not me. Not anymore. He set down his coffee, hands shaking slightly. You want to know why I can't give this up? Why I keep fighting even when it doesn't make sense? Yeah, I do. Because the day I went blind, I died. Not literally, but in every way that mattered. The man I was, the horseman, the rancher, the person people respected. He died in that accident, and everyone was fine with that. They mourned for a week and then moved on. Stopped seeing me as Ethan Rourke and started seeing me as the blind man. The charity case. The tragedy. He paused, collecting words that didn't want to come. This ranch is the only place where I'm still me, where what I do matters, where I can prove that losing my sight didn't mean losing everything. If I give that up, I'm admitting they were right, that I am just a blind man who can't take care of himself, and I'd rather die than accept that. Silence filled the barn, heavy with truth. You're wrong, Mara said quietly. About what? About being dead. Dead men don't fight this hard. Dead men don't pull 800-pound cows through snowstorms at midnight. Dead men don't refuse to quit even when everyone's telling them they should. She shifted closer. You're not dead, Ethan. You're just scared of being alive in a way you don't recognize. The words hit deeper than she probably intended. And what about you? He asked. What are you scared of? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. Same thing, probably. Being alive after I should have stopped. But, They sat in that confession, letting it settle between them. The cow groaned, shifted slightly. Not much, but movement. She's fighting, Ethan said. Yeah. Maybe we should take her lead. Maybe. The cow survived the night. By morning she was standing, wobbly but upright. Not healthy, not by a long shot, but alive. Fighting. Over the next week, they nursed her back slowly. Fed her by hand, kept her warm, monitored every breath. It was tedious, exhausting work that didn't leave room for much else. But it gave them something to focus on besides the impossible math of survival. Jake came by twice more with news from town. Dorn was getting aggressive, pressuring anyone who might help Ethan. The general store had quietly stopped extending credit. The feed supplier was asking for payment up front. The bank was making noise about old liens that probably didn't exist but sounded official enough to scare people. The noose was tightening, but the cow recovered, and somehow that mattered more than it should. 2 weeks after the storm, Ethan woke to the sound of horses. Multiple riders, coming fast. He was up and dressed before they reached the house, Mara already outside, watching. Who is it? He asked. 4 riders. Don't recognize them. The horses pulled up in the yard. Boots hit ground. Someone knocked on the door frame. Ethan Rourke? That's me. Name's Carson. I'm with the Cattlemen's Association. Mind if we talk? Ethan's guard went up immediately. The association was supposed to be neutral, but everyone knew who paid the biggest dues. Talk about what? About your herd. We've had complaints. What kind of complaints? That your cattle are wandering onto neighboring properties, that your fences are inadequate, that you're not maintaining your ranch to association standards. Carson's voice was bureaucratic, bored. We need to do an inspection, verify these claims. And if I refuse, then we assume the complaints are valid and take appropriate action. Which means what exactly? Suspension of your membership, possible seizure of cattle that pose a public nuisance, fines. A pause. Nobody wants that, Mr. Rourke. Just let us look around, verify everything's in order, and we'll be on our way. It was a trap. Had to be. But refusing would be worse. Fine. Look around. The four men spread out, examining everything with the thoroughness of people looking for problems. Ethan heard them in the barn, the corral, walking the fence lines. Mara stayed close, reporting what they were doing. Taking notes. Lots of them. Photographing the damaged sections. Of course they are. An hour later, they reconvened in the yard. Mr. Rourke, Carson said, voice taking on official weight. I'm afraid we found significant violations of association standards. Multiple fence sections in disrepair, inadequate shelter for your cattle, signs of neglect in your livestock management. That's garbage and you know it. I'm just reporting what I see. You're reporting what Dorn paid you to see. Silence. Sharp as broken glass. That's a serious accusation, Carson said carefully. It's the truth. This inspection is a setup. You came here with your mind already made up. We came here to verify complaints, which we have. Now you've got 30 days to bring your ranch up to code. After that, we'll return for a follow-up inspection. If violations persist, we'll take action. Carson climbed back on his horse. I suggest you take this seriously, Mr. Rourke. The association doesn't make empty threats. They rode off, leaving Ethan and Mara standing in the yard. 30 days, Mara said. That's not much time. It's not meant to be. That's the point. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Fix everything in 30 days or lose my membership. Lose my membership and I can't sell cattle through association channels. Can't sell, can't make money. Can't make money, can't survive. It's elegant, really. Dorn doesn't have to buy me out. He can just watch me starve. So we fix it. We can't. Not in 30 days. Not with winter still here. Not with the supplies we don't have and the money we don't have and the help we don't have. Then we do what we can and make them think it's enough. Ethan laughed, bitter. You want to fake an inspection? I want to survive long enough to have options. She was right. He hated that she was right, but she was. They spent the next 3 weeks in brutal, focused work. Fixed what they could fix, covered what they couldn't fix, made the ranch look functional even where it was barely holding together. Mara worked like a demon, putting in 16-hour days without complaint. Ethan pushed himself past exhaustion, past pain, past the point where his body screamed for rest. They were running a race against time, and winter, and their own limitations. Jake helped where he could, bringing supplies they couldn't afford and expertise they desperately needed. Other neighbors started showing up too, quietly. People who didn't agree with what Dorn was doing, even if they weren't brave enough to say it out loud. Old Maggie Kern brought food. Tom Brackley helped re-roof the barn. Even Sarah Wellborn showed up with medical supplies for the cattle, no questions asked. It wasn't much, but it was something. 29 days after the inspection, Carson and his men returned. Ethan met them in the yard, back straight, face showing none of the exhaustion eating him from inside. Mr. Rourke, ready for us? Ready as I'll ever be. They inspected everything again, took their time about it. Ethan waited, hands steady through pure force of will, while they looked for violations to justify what they'd already decided. Finally, Carson approached. Well, he said, and something in his tone had changed. I have to say, Mr. Rourke, I'm impressed. You've made significant improvements. Fences are reinforced, shelters adequate, cattle appear healthy. A pause. This is a passing inspection. Ethan didn't trust the words. What's the catch? No catch. You met the standards. That's all that matters. Dorn's not going to like that. Carson's expression hardened. Mr. Dorn doesn't dictate association policy. Whatever you think about how this inspection came about, the standards exist for good reasons. You met them. That's the end of it. He climbed back on his horse, his men following. Mr. Rourke? Word of advice. Watch your back. Man like Dorn doesn't take losing well. Then they were gone. Ethan stood in the yard, hardly believing what had just happened. They'd passed, actually passed.
Did we just win? Mara asked quietly. Maybe. Or maybe we just bought ourselves more time. I'll take it. That night, for the first time in months, Ethan slept straight through without waking. No nightmares, no anxiety, just the deep, exhausted sleep of someone who'd survived another impossible day. He woke to Mara shaking him. Ethan, wake up. What's wrong? The orphan calf. Jake just brought her in. Mother died, won't take milk from anyone else. He can't keep her. Ethan sat up, brain struggling to catch up. Why bring her here? Because he knows we'll take her. Because he knows you can't turn away something that needs help. She was right, and they both knew it. They went out to find Jake holding a gangly calf that couldn't have been more than 2 weeks old. She was bawling, frightened, and cold. Sorry, Jake said. I know you don't need another mouth to feed, but she'll die if someone doesn't take her, and I figured, we'll take her, Ethan said. They brought her into the barn, settled her in with the sick cow who'd recovered enough to be tolerant of company. The calf quieted, pressed against the larger animal's warmth. Another stray, Mara said. Yeah. You collect them, don't you? Strays. Ethan smiled despite himself. Takes one to know one. Fair point. They stood together in the barn, watching the calf settle. Outside, winter still pressed down hard. Inside, something small and fragile had found shelter. It wasn't much of a victory, but maybe it was enough. The calf they named Dusty because she kicked up dirt every time she moved, and by the end of the first week she'd become a fixture in the barn. Bottle feeding her 3 times a day was a pain, but it gave the day's structure, something to care about beyond survival. Ethan found himself looking forward to it, the way her rough tongue would wrap around his fingers after the bottle was empty, the soft sounds she made when settling down to sleep. Mara accused him of going soft. You're talking to her, she said one morning, amusement in her voice. So you sound like someone's grandmother cooing over a baby. She responds better when I talk to her. Sure she does. But Mara talked to Dusty too when she thought Ethan wasn't listening, and that made him smile. February came hard and stayed that way. The cold settled in like it meant to never leave, and every morning brought new challenges. Frozen water troughs, cattle huddled against the wind, fences that needed constant checking because ice made everything brittle. They fell into rhythms that felt almost normal. Up before dawn, feed the animals, check fences, mend what broke overnight. Meals were simple, eaten standing up more often than not. Conversations happened in fragments between tasks, never finishing because something always needed attention. But underneath the routine, tension was building. Spring auction was 2 months out, and that's when everything would be decided. Either they'd have enough cattle in good enough condition to sell for decent prices, or they wouldn't. Either the ranch would survive another year, or it would finally break. Ethan tried not to think about it, tried to focus on the day-to-day, the things he could control. But late at night, lying awake while Mara slept on the couch, the math ran circles in his head. 35 head, minus whatever losses winter would still take. At current prices, assuming they could get current prices, that would give them maybe enough to restock, repair, survive until next year. Maybe. It was Jake who brought news of Dorn's next move. He showed up on a gray afternoon, snow starting to fall again, his horse steaming in the cold. We need to talk, he said, voice tight. Inside, warming his hands around coffee, Jake laid it out. Dorn's buying the auction house. Ethan felt the floor drop. What? The Copperfield livestock auction. Been family run for 40 years. Dorn made them an offer they couldn't refuse. Closes end of the month. That's impossible. The Hendersons would never sell. They didn't want to. But Dorn called in some debts, applied pressure where it hurt, made it clear their choice was sell or lose everything. So they sold. Mara set down her cup hard. What does that mean for us?
It means Dorn controls who gets to sell cattle and at what prices. It means he can lowball Ethan's herd, force him to take pennies on the dollar, or refuse to auction them at all. Jake looked miserable. It's checkmate. Without auction access, you can't move your cattle. Can't move cattle, can't make money, game over. Ethan stood perfectly still, processing. Everything they'd fought for, every impossible day they'd survived, and it came down to this. One man with enough money and malice to close every door. There has to be another option, Mara said. Not around here. Nearest auction house is 3 territories over, and you'd lose most of your profit on transport and fees. Jake ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, Ethan. I don't know what else to say. After Jake left, the silence in the house was suffocating. Ethan sat at the table, head in his hands, not crying, past crying, just sitting with the weight of it all. Say something, Mara said finally. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Anything. Yell. Break something. Tell me we're going to fight this. How? He looked up toward her voice. Tell me how we fight this. I'm out of ideas, out of options, out of everything. So that's it? We just give up? I didn't say that. You're thinking it. He was. That was the hell of it. For the first time since this whole mess started, Ethan was genuinely considering surrender. Not because he wanted to, but because he was so tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of barely surviving. Tired of dragging everyone else into his stubbornness. Maybe Dorn's right, he said quietly. Maybe I am being selfish. Holding on to something I can't keep. Making it harder on everyone around me. Don't do that. Do what? Give him the satisfaction of making you doubt yourself. Mara moved closer, her voice fierce. You want to sell? Fine. Sell. But do it because you chose to, not because Caleb Dorn forced you to. Don't let him take that from you too. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then, I don't know if I have a choice anymore. Everyone has a choice. You taught me that. I never said that. You didn't have to. You showed it. Every day you get up, every time you refuse to quit when quitting would be easier, you're choosing. So choose now. Choose what happens next. He wanted to believe her, wanted to feel the fight come back, but all he felt was empty. That night, Ethan dreamed of the accident. The horse spooked, rearing, the fall, the kick that stole everything. He woke gasping, disoriented, reaching for sight that wouldn't come. Mara was there. He heard her cross the room, felt her hand on his shoulder. You're okay. Just a dream. Yeah. Want to talk about it? No. She sat on the edge of the bed anyway, close enough that he could feel her warmth. Neither spoke. Sometimes silence was enough. I'm scared, Ethan said finally. I know. Not of losing the ranch. I am, but that's not... He struggled for words. I'm scared that he's right, that I am just a blind man who can't take care of himself, that everything I've done this winter was just delaying the inevitable. And what if you are? The question caught him sideways. What? What if you are just a blind man who can't take care of himself? Does that change anything? It changes everything. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, you've spent the last 3 months doing the impossible. Yeah, you needed help. So what? Everyone needs help. That's not weakness. That's being human. Ethan wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. You keep waiting to be the person you were before, Mara continued. The horseman, the rancher, the man who could do everything alone. But that person's gone, Ethan. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe the person you are now, the one who falls down and gets back up, who asks for help when he needs it, who fights even when fighting makes no sense. Maybe that person's worth more than the old one ever was. I don't feel worth much of anything right now. Yeah, well, feelings lie, especially at 3 in the morning. Despite everything, Ethan almost smiled. Mara stood. Try to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Tomorrow's always hard. Then we're well practiced. She went back to the couch. Ethan lay in the dark, turning her words over. Maybe she was right. Maybe he'd been fighting the wrong battle all along, trying to prove he was still who he used to be instead of figuring out who he could become. Or maybe that was just exhaustion talking. Morning came too soon. They went through the routines mechanically, feeding animals, checking fences. Dusty had grown noticeably in just 2 weeks, her legs getting longer, her confidence building.
She followed Ethan around the barn like a puppy, butting her head against his leg for attention. She thinks you're her mother, Mara observed. That's disturbing. She could do worse. They were mending fence when the rider appeared. Not Jake this time. Someone else, moving fast. Ethan Rourke? The voice was young, nervous. Yeah? Got a message from the Henderson family. They want to see you. Said it's important. The Hendersons. The family that used to run the auction house before Dorn bought them out. When? Soon as you can get there. Ethan and Mara exchanged glances. Or rather, Mara looked at Ethan while he oriented toward the sound of her presence. Could be a trap, she said after the messenger left. Could be. You're going anyway. Have to. If there's even a chance they know something useful, then I'm coming with you. They rode into town that afternoon, the sky gray and threatening snow. The Henderson place was on the edge of Copperfield, a modest house that had seen better days. Old man Henderson met them at the door, looking 10 years older than the last time Ethan had seen him. Ethan, Miss Vance, come in. Inside, the whole family was gathered. Tom Henderson, his wife Margaret, their 3 grown sons, all wearing expressions that said this wasn't a social call. We heard what Dorn's doing, Tom said without preamble. Buying the auction house to shut you out. Probably thinks he's real clever. He usually is, Ethan said. Yeah, well, not this time. Tom leaned forward. We've been talking, all of us, and we don't like what's happening. Don't like how Dorn operates, how he squeezes people until they break. We're tired of it. So what are you saying? We're saying there might be another way. A private sale. You sell your cattle directly to buyers, no auction house involved. We've still got contacts, people who trust our judgment. We could broker the deals, help you get fair prices. Ethan felt hope kindle, dangerous and sharp. Dorn would never allow it. Dorn doesn't control private sales, not yet anyway. And if we move fast before he realizes what we're doing, you might have a shot. Why would you do this? Help me, I mean. After what Dorn did to you, because somebody has to stand up to him eventually, might as well be now. Tom's voice hardened. Besides, you're not the only one he's hurt. Half this valley's under his thumb in one way or another. Maybe it's time we reminded him that money isn't everything. Margaret spoke up, her voice gentle. We can't promise this will work, but it's a chance. More than you had this morning. Ethan sat back, overwhelmed. These people owed him nothing, had lost their family business because of Dorn's machinations, and they were offering to help anyway. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Tom replied. Say you'll let us try. Yes, absolutely yes. They spent the next hour planning. The Hendersons would reach out to buyers quietly, gauge interest. Ethan would get his cattle in the best possible condition, ready to move on short notice. Everything would happen fast, before Dorn caught wind and moved to block them. It was risky, maybe impossible, but it was something. Riding back to the ranch, Mara was quiet. You're worried, Ethan said. I'm cautious. There's a difference. But you think this could work? I think people are surprising, in good ways and bad. She paused. The Hendersons are taking a real risk helping you. If Dorn finds out, he could make their lives miserable. I know, so we better make it count. The next 3 weeks were controlled chaos. They worked the cattle hard, getting them fattened up as much as winter allowed, making sure each one was in presentable condition. Mara had an eye for it, knew which animals would fetch top dollar and which ones were better kept for breeding stock. Tom Henderson sent word weekly. Interest was building. Buyers were asking questions, making preliminary offers. Everything was falling into place. Too easily, Ethan thought. Nothing in his life had ever gone smoothly, and he didn't trust that this would be the exception. He was right. It was Mara who heard them first. She'd gone out to check the north fence and came back running, out of breath. Riders, at least 6, coming fast. Ethan's blood went cold. Dorn? Don't know, but they're not friendly. They barely had time to get to the house before the riders thundered into the yard. Ethan heard them spread out surrounding the property. Professional, coordinated. Ethan Rourke. A voice he didn't recognize, hard with authority. This is Deputy Marshal Crane. We need to talk. Marshal. Not good. Ethan stepped onto the porch, Mara beside him. About what? About stolen cattle.
We've had reports that you're in possession of livestock that doesn't belong to you. That's ridiculous. Every head on this ranch is mine. That's not what our information says. We've got a complaint from Caleb Dorn claiming that 15 head bearing his brand have been seen on your property. It took a second for the accusation to register. When it did, Ethan felt fury rise hot and fast. That's a lie. Dorn's lying. Maybe. Maybe not. Either way, we need to inspect your herd, verify brands, make sure everything's legitimate. You're welcome to look. You won't find anything because there's nothing to find. The marshal and his men spent an hour going through the cattle, checking brands, taking notes. Ethan waited, hands clenched, while they turned his life inside out, looking for evidence that didn't exist. Finally, Crane approached. Well, Mr. Rourke, I have to say we didn't find any cattle bearing Dorn's brand. Relief flooded through Ethan. So we're done here? Not quite. See, we did find something interesting. 3 head with brands that have been altered. Looks like someone tried to change them, hide the original marks. What? That's impossible. I'm looking right at them. Fresh alterations, done recently. That's a serious crime, Mr. Rourke. Cattle rustling carries heavy penalties. I didn't alter any brands. Someone must have... The realization hit him like a fist. Dorn. He set this up, planted evidence. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Check your records. Those 3 cattle weren't on my property last week when the association did their inspection. Someone brought them here, altered the brands, and then reported me. Can you prove that? Ethan couldn't. That was the point. Mr. Rourke, I'm going to have to take you into custody while we sort this out. You'll have a chance to present your case to a judge. How long will that take? Few weeks. Month, maybe. A month. The auction would happen in 2 weeks. If Ethan was locked up, he couldn't sell his cattle, couldn't save his ranch, couldn't do anything but watch everything fall apart from a jail cell. Perfect plan. Elegant. Impossible to prove and impossible to escape. No, Mara said suddenly. Excuse me? Crane turned toward her. I said no, you're not taking him. Miss, I don't think you understand. I understand fine. This is a setup. Everyone knows it. You know it. But you're going through with it anyway because Dorn pays better than conscience. That's slanderous. It's true. And you're a coward for going along with it. Mara's voice was steady, dangerous. You want to arrest someone? Arrest me. Those are my cattle. I bought them last week, brought them here. If the brands are altered, I did it. Mara, don't... Ethan started. Shut up, Ethan. This is my choice. She turned back to Crane. You can arrest me, prove I'm lying, waste everyone's time, or you can admit this whole thing stinks and walk away. Which is it going to be? Silence stretched thin and brittle. Crane shifted uncomfortably. I'd need proof of purchase. I've got receipts back at the bunkhouse. Let me see them. Mara went to get papers that didn't exist, buying time with sheer audacity. Ethan stood frozen, understanding what she was doing and hating it. She came back with old receipts from something else, altered dates, forged signatures. Crane looked them over, and Ethan could practically hear the calculation happening. Arrest Mara, deal with the paperwork and questions. Or accept the flimsy excuse and walk away with Dorn's money already in his pocket. These look in order, Crane said finally. But I'm confiscating those 3 head as evidence, and I better not hear about any more altered brands. Understood? Understood, Mara said. The marshal and his men loaded the 3 cattle and left. The dust settled. The silence that followed was deafening. You shouldn't have done that, Ethan said. Probably not. Those receipts were fake. Yep. If he'd looked closer, he didn't want to look closer. That's the point. People see what they want to see. Ethan wanted to be angry, wanted to yell at her for taking risks, for lying to a marshal, for putting herself in danger. But mostly he just felt grateful and terrified in equal measure. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We just lost 3 head and Dorn knows his frame job didn't work. He's going to come at us harder next time. Let him. Ethan? No. I'm done playing defense, done reacting to everything he throws at us. It's time we took the fight to him. And how exactly do we do that? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. That night, sitting alone after Mara had gone to the bunkhouse, Ethan made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd ride into town, find Dorn, have the conversation they'd been dancing around for months. It was time to end this. Morning came cold and clear. Ethan saddled Storm, told Mara he'd be back by evening. Where are you going? To see Dorn. That's a terrible idea. Probably. He'll eat you alive. Maybe. But I'm tired of letting him control everything. Time to change the rules. Then I'm coming with you. No, I need to do this alone. Ethan, Mara, please, let me do this my way. She was quiet for a long moment, then, fine. But if you're not back by sunset, I'm coming after you. Deal. The ride into town felt longer than usual. Ethan rehearsed what he'd say, how he'd stand, what arguments he'd make. None of it felt adequate. Dorn's office was in the best building in Copperfield, 3 stories of brick and glass that announced success and power. Ethan had only been inside once, years ago, back when he could see and the world made sense. The secretary tried to stop him. Mr. Dorn is busy. Tell him Ethan Rourke's here. Tell him I'm not leaving until we talk. 5 minutes later, Ethan was shown into Dorn's office. The man himself sat behind a desk that probably cost more than most people made in a year. Ethan, this is unexpected. I'm sure it is. Have a seat. I'll stand. Suit yourself. Dorn's chair creaked as he leaned back. What can I do for you? You can stop. Stop the sabotage, the frame jobs, the pressure. Stop trying to destroy me. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, you do. We both know what's been happening. I'm here to make you an offer. I'm listening. I'll sell you the ranch, not the water rights, just the land. You get what you want. I keep what matters most. Everyone walks away. Dorn laughed. You think I want your land? Ethan, I want your water. Always have. Land without water is worthless out here. You know that. Then we're at an impasse. No, you're at an impasse. I'm exactly where I want to be. Dorn stood, moved closer. Let me explain something to you. This valley's changing. The old ways, independent ranchers, family operations, stubborn fools who think they can survive alone, those days are done. The future belongs to people who understand consolidation, efficiency, control. Control, Ethan repeated flatly. That's right. And you're in my way. So yes, I've made things difficult for you. I'll continue making things difficult until you accept reality and sell. Not just land, everything, on my terms. And if I don't, then you lose it all anyway, but slower, more painfully. I can wait. Can you? Ethan stood there, feeling the hatred roll off Dorn like heat. This man didn't just want the ranch. He wanted Ethan broken, humiliated, erased. You're gonna lose, Ethan said quietly. Am I? Yeah, because you made a mistake. You thought I was alone. Thought everyone would eventually abandon the blind man. But they didn't. People are helping me. People you can't control or buy or intimidate. And that terrifies you. Nothing terrifies me. Your face says different. Dorn's expression went cold. Get out of my office. Gladly. Ethan walked out, heart pounding, hands shaking with adrenaline. It hadn't accomplished anything concrete, but it had confirmed what he needed to know. This fight wasn't ending until one of them was destroyed. He rode home through afternoon sun that he couldn't see but felt warm on his face. The ranch appeared in his mind the way it always did, memory and sound combining to create sight. Mara met him in the yard. Well, he won't back down. Didn't think he would. So we move forward with the Henderson plan. Sell the cattle privately. Take whatever profit we can and survive another year. And after that? After that, we do it again and again for as long as it takes. That could be forever. I'm counting on it. They went inside together into the house that smelled like home. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the promise of more snow. But inside, for now, they were warm. And that would have to be enough. The week before the sale, Tom Henderson sent word that 3 buyers were confirmed. Good buyers, the kind who paid fair prices and didn't ask too many questions about why a rancher was avoiding the auction house. They'd meet at the ranch, inspect the cattle, and make their offers on the spot. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. Stop worrying, Mara said on the morning the buyers were due to arrive. We've done everything we can. That's what worries me. They'd spent the past week preparing. Every animal had been checked, groomed, fed the best hay they could afford. The corral had been reinforced, the barn swept clean, every visible part of the ranch made to look functional and prosperous. It was theater, but necessary theater. The first buyer arrived at 9. Samuel Cross, a weathered man in his 60s who'd been running cattle longer than Ethan had been alive. His handshake was firm, assessing. "Heard you've had a rough winter," Cross said. "We managed." "So I see." Cross walked the corral, examining each animal with the practiced eye of someone who knew exactly what he was looking at. Ethan waited, tension coiling in his gut, while Mara stood beside him, equally tense. The minutes stretched. Ethan tracked Cross by sound, the man's boots on dirt, the way he talked low to the cattle, testing their temperament. A good buyer looked at more than just meat and bone. He looked at disposition, health, breeding potential. After 20 minutes, Cross returned. "I'll take 12 head, $40 each." It was a fair price, maybe even generous given the circumstances. Ethan felt relief wash through him. "Deal." They shook on it. Cross would return the next day with wagons and payment. The second buyer came an hour later. Margaret Chen, sharp and no-nonsense, representing a consortium from the Eastern Territories. She spent less time looking and more time calculating, her assistant taking notes on a clipboard. 10 head, she said finally. 45 each, but I want first pick." "Done." Chen nodded, satisfied. "We'll be back tomorrow morning. Have them ready." After she left, Ethan and Mara stood in the yard, not quite believing their luck. 22 head sold, Mara said. "That's nearly $1,000. If they actually show up tomorrow, they will." "You don't know that." "I know Cross. Man's word is iron, and Chen doesn't waste time on deals she won't honor." Mara paused. "We're going to make it, Ethan. We actually might make it." He wanted to believe her, but years of disappointment had taught him to wait for the other shoe to drop. The third buyer was supposed to arrive at 2. By 3, there was still no sign of him. By 4, Ethan was pacing. "Something's wrong," he said. "Give him time. Roads are still rough from the melt." "It's not the roads." At 5 o'clock, a rider finally appeared, but it wasn't the buyer. It was Jake, and he was riding hard enough that Ethan could hear the urgency before Jake even spoke. "Ethan!" He pulled up in a spray of dirt, horse-breathing hard. "We've got problems." "What kind of problems?" "Dorn knows about the private sale. He's been making calls all afternoon, pressuring buyers, threatening anyone who does business with you. Called in favors, made promises, reminded people who really controls commerce in this valley." Ethan's stomach dropped. "How did he find out?" "Does it matter? Point is, your third buyer just sent word he's not coming. Got spooked by whatever Dorn told him." "What about Cross and Chen?" "Still good for now, but Dorn's working on them too. You need to get those cattle loaded and gone before he can stop it." Jake dismounted, led his horse to water. "There's more. Dorn's been to the bank. He's calling in every favor, every debt, trying to make sure nobody in this territory will do business with you ever again. He can't do that. He's doing it. And unless you've got friends with deeper pockets and longer reach, he's going to succeed." Mara came out of the house, wiping her hands on a cloth. "How much time do we have?" "Until tomorrow morning, maybe. Once Cross and Chen show up, once money changes hands, it'll be harder for Dorn to stop it. But until then," Jake trailed off. "We're vulnerable," Ethan finished. They spent the evening in tense preparation, double-checking everything, making sure the cattle were ready to move at first light. Nobody said much. The weight of what could still go wrong pressed down on all of them. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed listening to the house settle, Tamara's breathing from the couch downstairs. She'd insisted on staying close again, like she had during the storm. Neither of them acknowledged it anymore. It had just become their routine. Around midnight, he gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. Found Mara already there, staring into a cold cup of coffee. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too much thinking." "Yeah." He sat across from her. The silence stretched, comfortable despite the tension. "What if they don't come?" Mara asked finally. "Cross and Chen, what if Dorn gets to them overnight? Then we're back where we started, which is nowhere, which is still breathing." Ethan reached across the table, found her hand. "We've survived worse. We'll survive this." "You really believe that?" "I have to. What's the alternative?"
She laughed, short and bitter. The alternative is admitting Dorn wins.
That money and power trump everything else. That people like us don't get happy endings. People like us. Broken people. Stubborn people. People who don't know when to quit even when quitting makes sense. She turned her hand, laced her fingers through his. People who ask blind men to dance. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. That was pretty stupid. Yeah, it was. But I'm glad you did. Me too. They sat like that until dawn started to gray the windows. Then they got up, got dressed, and went out to face whatever came next. 7 o'clock. No sign of Cross or Chen. 8 o'clock. Still nothing. By 9, Ethan was convinced Dorn had won, that his buyers had been scared off or bought off or simply decided the risk wasn't worth it. Then he heard wagons, multiple wagons, coming from 2 different directions. That's Cross, Mara said, watching from the porch. And Chen's coming from the south road. They'd come. Both of them. Despite Dorn's pressure, despite the risks, they'd honored their word. The next 2 hours were controlled chaos. Cross's men loaded 12 head with practiced efficiency. Chen's people were equally professional, selecting their animals and moving them into transport wagons. Money changed hands. Actual cash, heavy and real, in Ethan's palm. Cross paused before leaving. Dorn sent someone to my place last night, made threats, promised consequences, told me I was making an enemy I couldn't afford. I'm sorry, Ethan said. Don't be. Man overplayed his hand. See, I've been in this territory longer than Caleb Dorn's been alive. I remember when his daddy ran things, and I remember when that empire crumbled because the old man forgot one simple truth. You can't control people forever. Eventually, they pushed back. Cross climbed onto his wagon. This is me pushing back, and I suspect I won't be the only one. He left, wagons rolling out with 12 head of Ethan's cattle and $480 of his money. Chen was equally direct when her turn came. My consortium doesn't respond well to threats. Mr. Dorn may control parts of this valley, but his reach doesn't extend to where we operate. If he wants to make an enemy of us over a simple cattle purchase, that's his mistake to make. She handed Mara a bank draft for $450, slightly less than promised, but she'd negotiated down to 9 head instead of 10, keeping the numbers honest. After they left, Ethan and Mara stood in the suddenly quiet yard with Jake. $930, Ethan said, doing the math, plus the 13 head we still have. That's not enough, Jake said quietly. You know it's not. You need to restock, repair, prepare for next winter. $900 might get you through spring if you're careful and lucky, but it won't rebuild what you've lost. So what do you suggest? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Auction. Take the remaining 13 head to Dorn's auction. See what you can get. That's suicide, Mara said flatly. He'll lowball us out of spite. Pay half what they're worth just to prove he can. Maybe. But it's the only market left. Every other buyer in the territory knows Dorn's watching. Nobody's going to risk his anger for a private sale, not after this. Jake looked miserable. I'm sorry, Ethan. I wish there was another way. After Jake left, the silence in the yard was oppressive. Ethan sat on the porch steps, head in his hands. All the fighting, all the surviving, and it came down to this, crawling to Dorn's auction house and begging for scraps. Mara sat beside him. We don't have to do this. Yes, we do. We could hold on to the 13 head, use them for breeding stock, build slowly. With what money? We can't make it through to next year on $900, not with repairs needed, supplies to buy, feed to stock. He laughed bitterly. Cross was right. I should have sold everything and left when I had the chance. You don't mean that, don't I? He turned toward her voice. What have I accomplished here, really? I've survived, barely, dragged you into my mess, made enemies of powerful people. And for what? To prove I'm not broken? To show I can still run a ranch blind? What's the point if I lose it all anyway? The point is you tried. The point is you didn't quit. Maybe quitting would have been smarter. Mara grabbed his arm, hard enough to hurt. Listen to me. You want to sell to Dorn? Fine. You want to walk away from all this? That's your choice. But don't you dare say it was pointless. Don't you dare minimize what we've done here. We've survived, that's all. Survival isn't victory. Sometimes it is. Her voice was fierce. Sometimes just making it through the winter, just getting up every day and doing the work, just refusing to let the bastards grind you down. Sometimes that's the biggest victory there is. Ethan wanted to believe her, wanted to feel the fight come back, but he was so tired. Tired of struggling, tired of barely making it, tired of being the cautionary tale everyone whispered about. I don't know if I can keep doing this, he said quietly. Then don't. Take Dorn's money, sell everything, walk away. She paused. But know that if you do, it won't be because you failed. It'll be because you chose a different path. And that's okay. Not everything has to end in victory or defeat. Sometimes things just end. They sat together as the sun climbed higher, neither speaking, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Ethan stood. The auction's Saturday, 3 days from now. We'll take the 13 head, see what happens. If Dorn wants to humiliate me publicly, at least I'll go down swinging. That's the spirit, Mara said, but she didn't sound convinced. The next 3 days passed in strange limbo. They went through the motions, feeding cattle, checking fences, maintaining the ranch, but there was a finality to it all, like they were preparing for an ending. Jake came by Thursday with more bad news. Dorn's been talking, spreading word that you're desperate, that your cattle are poor quality, that anyone who bids is throwing money away. He's poisoning the well before the auction even starts. Of course he is. There's more. He's put out word that he's buying the cattle himself, plans to make a lowball offer and dare anyone to counter it. Mara slammed her hand on the table. That's extortion. That's business in Copperfield. Jake looked at Ethan. You could refuse to sell, pull out of the auction. And do what with 13 head I can't afford to feed? Nobody had an answer for that. Friday night, Ethan barely slept. He kept running numbers in his head, calculating and recalculating, trying to find a scenario where this worked out. Every version ended the same way, with him selling to Dorn for pennies or walking away with nothing. Around 3 in the morning, he gave up and went to the barn. Dusty greeted him with her usual enthusiasm. Bigger now, but still acting like a calf around him. Hey girl, you're getting too big for this. She butted her head against his chest anyway, nearly knocking him over. Stubborn, like everyone else around here. He heard footsteps. Mara, of course. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Didn't try. She leaned against the stall beside him. They stood in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds, wind in the eaves, horses shifting, the particular creaks of an old barn settling. Whatever happens tomorrow, Mara said finally, I want you to know something. Yeah? This winter. Working here, fighting alongside you. It's been the first time since my husband died that I've felt like myself. Not the grieving widow, not the drifter with no place to land, just me, doing work that matters with someone who matters. She paused. So thank you for that. Whatever else happens, thank you for giving me that. Ethan felt his throat tighten. You gave me the same thing. More, probably. You gave me a reason to keep going when I'd run out of reasons. We're quite a pair. Yeah, we are. They stayed in the barn until dawn, not talking much, just being present with each other and the uncertain future. Saturday morning came too fast. They loaded the 13 cattle into borrowed wagons, Jake's again, the man too loyal to let them face this alone. The drive to town was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts about what was coming. The auction yard was more crowded than Ethan expected. Word had spread, apparently. The whole territory wanted to see Ethan Rourke's final stand, watch him either salvage something or lose everything in spectacular fashion. Dorn was there, of course. Ethan heard his voice from across the yard, holding court with his cronies, probably placing bets on how low he could drive the price. Tom Henderson found them as they were unloading. Ethan, Mara, I'm sorry about this. Not your fault, Ethan said. Feels like it. This used to be a fair market. Now it's just Dorn's playground. Tom lowered his voice. Listen, I'll do what I can to keep things honest, but if he's the only bidder, I know, do your best. That's all I can ask. They settled the cattle in the holding pen. Other sellers gave them space, like failure was contagious. Ethan stood at the rail, feeling the weight of every watching eye. 10 minutes until your lot comes up, Tom called. Mara found Ethan's hand, squeezed it. Whatever happens, I know. The 10 minutes felt like hours. Then Tom's voice rang out across the yard. Next lot, 13 head from the Rourke Ranch, mixed quality, winter survivors. Good foundation stock for anyone looking to build a herd. Tom was being generous with the description. Ethan appreciated it, even though it wouldn't matter. Let's start the bidding. Who'll give me $40 a head? Silence. Heavy and deliberate. 35? More silence. Ethan could feel the crowd's anticipation, everyone waiting for what came next. Come on now, Tom tried again, frustration creeping into his voice. These are decent animals, worth at least $30 each.
I'll bid $20. Dorn's voice rang out, casual and cruel. For the lot. The crowd murmured. $20 total, not per head, for all 13 animals combined. It was insulting, deliberately, calculatedly insulting. Ethan felt Mara tense beside him. Mr. Dorn, Tom said carefully, I think you mean 20 per head. I said what I said. $20 for the lot, that's my offer. That's robbery, Mara said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's business, Miss Vance. If Mr. Rourke doesn't like it, he's welcome to find another buyer. Dorn's voice carried across the yard. Oh wait, there are no other buyers. Funny how that works. Anyone else? Tom called, desperation clear now. Anyone want to bid on these cattle? Silence. No one wanted to cross Dorn. Not publicly, not where it would be remembered. $20 going once, Tom said, the words clearly painful. Going twice, $30 a head, a new voice cut in. Everyone turned. Standing at the back of the crowd was Samuel Cross, hat pulled low, but his voice unmistakable. The yard erupted in whispers. Cross stepped forward, pushing through the crowd. $30 per animal, he repeated clearly. $390 for the lot. Dorn's face went red. Cross, what are you doing? Bidding on cattle. That's how auctions work, isn't it? Those animals aren't worth 30. I disagree. And last I checked, my money spends just as well as yours. Tom looked like he might cry with relief. We have 30 a head. Do I hear 35? $40 a head, another voice called. Margaret Chen, appearing from the crowd's edge. 520 for the lot. The whispers turned to full conversations. Something was happening here, something bigger than just a cattle auction. This is irregular, Dorn sputtered. These buyers already purchased from Rourke this week. They can't what? Chen's voice was cold. Can't participate in a public auction? I wasn't aware of such restrictions. Tom, Dorn turned to Henderson. This is your auction house. Are you going to allow this? Tom straightened his shoulders. Actually, Mr. Dorn, this is your auction house. You bought it, remember? Which means you set the rules. So tell me, are there restrictions on who can bid? Dorn was trapped. If he said yes, he'd be admitting to fixing the auction. If he said no, he had to let it continue. Anyone can bid, he said through gritted teeth. Excellent, Tom's voice carried new energy. We have 40 ahead. Do I hear 45? 50, Cross countered immediately. 60, Chen replied. Back and forth they went, the price climbing impossibly high. Ethan stood frozen, not understanding what was happening. These were the same buyers who'd purchased from him 3 days ago at reasonable prices. Why were they bidding like this now? Then it clicked. They weren't bidding on the cattle. They were bidding against Dorn, making a public stand, drawing a line in front of the whole territory. $75 a head, Cross said firmly. Chen hesitated, calculating, finally shook her head and stepped back. Tom looked to Dorn. Sir, do you wish to counter? This is absurd, Dorn spat. Those animals aren't worth $75 each. Everyone knows it. This is a setup, a conspiracy. It's an auction, Cross interrupted. Open market, free commerce, all the things you claim to believe in, Mr. Dorn, unless you only believe in them when they benefit you. The crowd went absolutely silent. That kind of direct challenge didn't happen in Copperfield, not to Caleb Dorn. Dorn's face had gone from red to purple. $80 a head, the crowd gasped. At 80 per head, he'd be paying over $1,000 for cattle worth half that at best. Cross smiled. $100 per head. You're out of your mind, Dorn said. Am I? Or am I just demonstrating what you've been doing to this valley for years? Using money to control, to manipulate, to force people into corners. How does it feel being on the other side? 100 going once, Tom called, his voice shaking with emotion. Going twice, the 150, Dorn snarled.
The crowd erupted in chaos. 150 per head was insane. Nearly $2,000 for 13 cattle that should sell for maybe 600. Cross met Dorn's eyes across the yard. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Cross smiled and stepped back. The bid stands at 150, Tom announced. Do I hear 200? A new voice, this one from the side. Old man Peterson, a rancher who'd never spoken up about anything in his life. 200 per head. Peterson, you senile fool, Dorn started. I'm not senile, and I'm not a fool. I'm just tired. Peterson's voice carried clear and strong despite his age. Tired of watching you squeeze everyone. Tired of being afraid. Tired of letting fear stop me from doing what's right. 200 per head. My final offer. Another rancher stepped forward. I'll match Peterson. 200 per head. Then another. 200 here, too. One by one, ranchers who'd been silent for years found their voices. Not all of them. Maybe not even half. But enough. Enough to make it clear that something had shifted. Dorn looked around the yard, seeing his control slipping away in real time. This is a farce, he said. I won't participate in... Then don't, Cross cut him off. But these bids stand. And if you try to interfere with this auction, if you pressure these men to back down, I'll make sure every newspaper in 3 territories knows exactly how you operate, how you manipulate markets, threaten competitors, destroy anyone who won't bend. I've got documentation, Mr. Dorn, years of it. I've been waiting for the right moment to use it. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Tom's voice cracked like a whip. We have multiple bids at 200 per head. Going once, going twice. The gavel came down. Sold. 13 head split between Peterson, Cross, and Henderson Consortium. 200 per head, $2,600 total. The yard exploded. Some cheering, some angry, everyone talking at once. Ethan stood in the center of it, completely overwhelmed. $2,600. More than he dreamed possible. More than made sense. Cross appeared at his elbow. Don't read too much into this, he said quietly, pressing a bank draft into Ethan's hand. We're not heroes. We're just tired of being bullied. Peterson approached next, shaking Ethan's hand with surprising strength. My contribution is as much spite as charity, but it's honest spite, the kind that says Dorn doesn't own this valley, no matter how much he thinks he does. One by one, the buyers settled their accounts. Real money, real transactions, all above board and legal. Dorn watched it all with a face like stone. When the last buyer had paid and left, he approached Ethan directly. This isn't over, he said quietly. You think you've won? This is just a setback. I'll own your ranch eventually. It's only a matter of time. Maybe, Ethan said, or maybe you've lost something today you can't buy back. People aren't as afraid of you as they used to be. That's worth more than any ranch. We'll see. Dorn left, and with him went the last of the tension. The crowd dispersed slowly, people stopping to shake Ethan's hand, offer congratulations, share their own stories of Dorn's intimidation. Tom Henderson caught Ethan before he could leave. What happened here today? That was important. You became a symbol of something. Resistance. Hope. The possibility that power has limits. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. You did anyway. Tom glanced around, lowered his voice. Cross wasn't bluffing about the documentation. He's been collecting evidence on Dorn for years. And after today's spectacle, he's ready to use it. There's going to be an investigation. Federal, probably. Dorn's empire is built on fraud and intimidation, and it's about to come crashing down. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. The ride home was surreal. $2,600 in bank drafts, plus the $930 from earlier sales. $3,530 total. More than enough to rebuild, restock, prepare for next winter and beyond. We actually did it, Mara said, sounding dazed. We survived. Yeah. So why don't you sound happy? Ethan thought about that. Because it shouldn't have taken a public uprising, shouldn't have required other people risking everything to stand up for me. I should have been able to do this alone. But you weren't alone, that's the point. Mara's hand found his. Nobody survives alone out here. The whole mythology of the independent rancher, it's a lie.
Everyone needs help. Everyone leans on neighbors. That's not weakness. That's how communities work. She was right. He'd been chasing a fantasy, trying to prove he was still the man he'd been before the accident. But maybe that man hadn't been as strong as he remembered. Maybe real strength was knowing when to ask for help, when to accept it, when to stand with others instead of alone. They reached the ranch as the sun started to set. The house looked the same. The barn still leaned slightly to the left. The fences still needed mending. Nothing had changed physically, but everything felt different. Over the next weeks, they rebuilt with purpose. Used the auction money to buy quality breeding stock, 20 head of young cattle, healthy and strong. Fixed the barn roof properly instead of patching it. Replaced fence sections that had been jury-rigged too long. Stocked supplies, not just for survival, but for comfort. Neighbors became regular visitors. Jake came by twice a week, often bringing his wife now that the atmosphere had shifted. The Hendersons stopped by with vegetables from their garden. Even old Maggie Kern appeared with preserves and gossip. The wall of isolation that had surrounded the ranch for months crumbled. What emerged was something Ethan hadn't experienced since before the accident: community. True to Tom's word, federal investigators arrived in Copperfield in late May. They were thorough and relentless, uncovering a web of fraud, intimidation, and market manipulation that reached back years. Dorn tried to fight it, hired expensive lawyers, made threats. None of it worked. By June, his empire was collapsing. Properties sold to cover debts, business partners fleeing. The auction house returned to the Henderson family at a fraction of what Dorn had paid for it. Ethan watched it all from a distance, feeling something less than satisfaction but more than indifference. Dorn had brought it on himself. But there was no joy in watching a man destroyed, even a man who tried to destroy others. Summer came hot and rich. The new cattle thrived. Hay harvest was exceptional. The ranch prospered in ways it hadn't in years. One evening in July, sitting on the porch after a long day, Mara brought up something they'd been dancing around for weeks. "I've been thinking about the future," she said. "Yeah?" "About partnerships, legal ones." Ethan's heart kicked. "You want to be partners? Officially?" "If you're asking if I want half the ranch, the answer's yes. If you're asking something else," she paused, "then yes to that too, eventually. But let's start with business and see where it goes." "That's very practical of you. I'm a practical person." "You asked a blind man to dance in front of half the territory." "Okay, I'm a mostly practical person." They drew up papers making Mara a full partner in the ranch. Equal ownership, equal say, equal responsibility. It felt right in a way few things had. Jake married them in a simple ceremony that August. Just a few friends gathered on the porch. No fuss or ceremony. Mara wore a simple dress. Ethan wore his best shirt. They promised to stand together through whatever came next. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense. No grand speeches or dramatic gestures, just two people who'd survived impossible odds choosing to keep surviving together. Fall arrived with its usual rush of preparation. They worked together seamlessly now, Ethan and Mara, their partnership refined by months of shared struggle. She'd learned to anticipate what he needed without being asked. He'd learned to trust her judgment without questioning it. Dusty had grown into a solid young cow, first calf heifer, come spring. She still followed Ethan around when he worked in the barn, though now she was too big to butt him without risk of injury. "You're going to be a mother," Ethan told her one afternoon. "Better start acting responsible." Mara laughed from the doorway. "That's rich, coming from the man who lets her steal apples from his pocket." "She's earned them. She's spoiled. Can't she be both?" Winter came hard, but they were ready. Cattle were healthy and well-fed. Hay stores were substantial. The house had been insulated, the barn reinforced. They'd learned from last year's mistakes and corrected them. When the first major storm hit in November, they weathered it together. No panic, no chaos, just steady work and mutual support. One night during a blizzard, snowed in and comfortable, they sat by the fire while wind howled outside. "You ever think about before?" Mara asked. "Before what?" "Before the accident. Do you miss it? Being who you were?" Ethan considered the question carefully. "I miss seeing. Miss the ease of doing things that are hard now. But the person I was?" He shook his head. "I'm not sure I miss him. He was confident, sure, capable. But he was also alone. Thought he didn't need anyone. Thought asking for help was weakness. And now I know better. Losing my sight didn't make me less. It just made me different, forced me to find new ways of being strong.
New ways of seeing what matters. He reached out, found her hand in the darkness that was his constant companion. Brought me to you. Hard to regret a path that ends up somewhere good. Even with everything it took to get here? Especially because of everything it took. They sat together as the storm raged, warm and safe, and together. Spring came eventually, as it always did. The snow melted, revealing a world renewed. Cattle that had survived winter emerged healthy. Calves were born, Dusty producing a strong heifer that she fussed over like she'd invented motherhood. The ranch that had been dying a year ago was now thriving. Not perfect, still requiring constant work, constant attention, but alive, growing. In April, Cross stopped by with news. Dorn's leaving. Sold off the last of his holdings, headed east. Figures there's nothing left for him here. Good, Mara said. Maybe. Cross settled into a chair on the porch. Or maybe we've just pushed him somewhere else where he'll do the same thing to different people. Men like that don't change. Not our problem anymore, Ethan said. Fair enough. Cross accepted coffee from Mara. I actually came by with a proposition. Some of us older ranchers have been talking. We want to form a cooperative, pool resources, share equipment, help each other through rough patches. Make sure what happened with Dorn doesn't happen again.
What would that look like?
Meetings every month, fair pricing agreements, mutual aid when someone gets hit hard. Nothing fancy, just neighbors helping neighbors. Cross paused. We'd like you and Mara to join, to be part of the leadership, actually. What you did last year, surviving when everyone said you couldn't, that means something. People respect it. Ethan and Mara exchanged glances. We're in, Mara said. The cooperative became a fixture of valley life. Not perfect, frequently contentious, but functional. A way for independent ranchers to maintain their independence while supporting each other. Summer brought prosperity. The cattle they'd bought with auction money produced strong calves. Hay sold at good prices. The ranch that had been one bad break from collapse was now solidly profitable. On a warm August evening, exactly a year after their wedding, Ethan and Mara sat on the porch watching sunset. Mara described the colors as she always did, painting pictures with words. Fire along the horizon, purple, bleeding to dark blue overhead, stars starting to show. Beautiful? Always. Storm and Mara's mare grazed nearby, their foals playing rough games in the twilight. Dusty's calf was growing fast, already showing the stubbornness of her mother. You ever think about where we'd be if I hadn't asked you to dance? Mara said. All the time. And I'd probably be dead or broken. Ranch would be Dorn's. Everything I cared about would be gone. Dramatic. True, though, she laughed. Maybe. Or maybe you'd have found another way. You're resourceful like that. I'm stubborn. There's a difference. Is there? They sat in comfortable silence. A coyote called from the ridge. An owl answered. The land sang its evening songs. I'm happy, Ethan said suddenly. Yeah? Yeah, first time in longer than I can remember. Not just surviving, actually happy. Good. Me too. Inside the house, the clock chimed 9. Time to bring the horses in, check the cattle one last time, bank the fire for the night. All the small rituals of ranch life that had become home. But they sat a while longer, neither wanting to break the moment. The frontier was still harsh, winter would still come, challenges would still arise. Nothing was guaranteed, nothing was perfect. But they'd survived the impossible once. Built something real from the wreckage of everything they'd lost. Found each other in the darkest places and chose to stay. That choice, more than anything else, was what mattered. Ethan Rourke had been the finest rider in the territory once. Then a blind man everyone stopped seeing. Now he was a rancher, a partner, a husband. A man who'd learned that vision wasn't just about sight, that strength wasn't about independence, that home was what you built with people brave enough to build it alongside you. The stars came out one by one, filling the sky Ethan couldn't see but knew was there. Mara described each constellation, tracing patterns he remembered from before.
There's Orion, the hunter, and there's the Big Dipper, pointing north like always. Like always, Ethan repeated. Some things changed. Some things endured. The trick was knowing which was which and finding peace with both. They went inside together, leaving the night to the land and the creatures that called it home. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, new moments to survive and celebrate. But tonight, there was warmth and rest, and the simple contentment of a hard day finished. The ranch settled into darkness. The cattle bedded down. The horses found their stalls. And inside a small house on 200 acres of stubborn land, two people who'd found each other against all odds slept peacefully. The frontier could be cruel, but it could also be kind in its own harsh way. It broke people, yes, but sometimes, if they were stubborn enough and lucky enough and willing to accept help when it came, it remade them into something stronger. That was the real victory. Not wealth or comfort or even survival, though those mattered. The real victory was becoming the person the struggle required you to be, and finding someone to stand beside while you did it. The wind picked up outside, rattling the loose board on the porch that Ethan kept meaning to fix, and probably never would. It had become part of the house's voice, familiar as breathing. Tomorrow he'd check the fences, move the cattle to fresh pasture, work with Mara on the books, planning for next season, all the ordinary tasks that made up a life. And he'd do it with purpose, with partnership, with the quiet certainty that he'd found something worth fighting for and people worth fighting alongside. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.